Hi, it won't surprise you to know that I'm Robin, this is Jhinuk. Jhinuk's one of the creative practitioners that we heard about this morning. So basically what's going to happen is the next 20 minutes, I'm going to give you a bit of background to the project. Jhinuk's going to share her her journey, as they say on Strictly. And then we're going to finish off with actually explaining what the actual workshop was. But the context, it's all about context, really, this. So, as we said, this was an Esmee Fairbairn Collections Fund project. Those of you here last year may have heard Josephine Frank talk a little bit about the early stage of this project. That was an adult project. This was very much a schools project. And the Cadbury Research Library wanted to take some risks, and that's the great thing about using external funding. That I'm externally funded, I'm a consultant. Jhinuk's an external artist, so they were able to pay for us to do this project and basically take risks, which is what and the results were great. We wanted to do something different and pretty much broaden the scope of the Cadbury Research Library. Sorry, if I use the CRL acronym, it means Cadbury Research Library. So what we did was anyone knows Birmingham here, they'll know that well, I can't point, but that big yellow thing in the bottom is the M6, big road that basically these two schools that we identified. I don't think we can see that or not. There's one called Topcliffe Primary, which is in the north bit there, and just go down a bit and you see one called Firs Primary. Now, these are both part of a new academy, a multi-academy trust called Community Education Partnerships. And as the name suggests, that particular academy and their chief executive was really, really keen to work with external partners like ourselves. All these schools are very, very close together, but they are worlds apart in terms of demographics, all sorts of other social indicators that are too far to go into now. But essentially, Topcliffe is an area called Castle Vale, which is very much what we used to call C2DE, very working class or no work, if you like. And the Firs is very much A and B. Also, Topcliffe is predominantly 95% white, and the Firs was about the same BME. So incredibly different schools in every aspect, but part of the same academy trust, which is quite unusual. So we wanted, and I knew the chief executive of this trust, so it's quite useful really. And they didn't need persuading to get involved with this, put it that way. They were really, really keen to get involved. Some of you may know the Cadbury Research Library has a massive collection called the Mingana collection of 3,000 Middle Eastern manuscripts. And basically the project is simply this: we wanted to use that collection as inspiration for creativity. Simple as that. That was open-ended as it was, which was great for someone like Jhinuk. What I would also emphasise with the school, even though we didn't need to persuade them, my background is I used to be a teacher and I used to be in museum education and I'm a consultant, but what I think a lot of archives, museums, libraries are missing the trick by not emphasising to schools the importance of another acronym, SMSC, spiritual, moral, social and cultural. This is really big news at the moment in schools, particularly through Ofsted as well. And this project definitely, it ticked all them boxes in terms of social impact. This is also important for the Esmee Fairbairn as well, I must say. So as I say, we didn't really need to convince the schools to collaborate on this. It's also really important that we use the real thing. All these manuscripts I'm showing you now are part of the Mingana collection, ranging from incredibly, the oldest, some of you know, is the Birmingham Quran, which is around about mid-7th century. And as I say, we didn't want to patronise the kids by saying, here's a copy. We wanted to get them using the real thing, which you'll see later. We also asked the curator, an inspirational woman called Neelam Hussain, for some interest. All we said to her was, can you get some interesting stuff out? I'm using the word stuff because that seems to be the word of the day. So that, for example, this is a travel journal. As you can probably tell, this is the West Bank there on the right. And so this is really interesting, all in Arabic again. And as I've already mentioned, this is we didn't actually use the Birmingham Quran, by the way. But it is part of the collection, so I wanted to sort of show you that is part of this Mingana collection. So I knew of Jhinuk's work before. I've known her for many, many years, and I had confidence that she would do a good job. And that's obviously really important when you're doing a pilot project like this, or a one-off project, as it turned out. I knew she'd do a good job. It's also important that she wasn't just an artist. She's actually an illustrator, which was, as you'll hear in a minute, was a really important part of the project. So I'm going to hand over to her now. and come back.
Thank you. I'm going to show you a few slides that I actually showed to the children when I first introduced the project from my perspective, and then just talk about my journey and behind the scenes and what I observed during the process before we go on to explain exactly what we did. Just because I think that's important to realise that it's not about who you engage in the process, it's about who you employ as well. It's had an effect on my artistic practice as an illustrator, and also on the other side of it, I'm not just an illustrator, I work for a university in the disability service as an advisor supporting disabled students, and because their subjects are artistic practices, it sort of gave me more scope about how they would engage with the archives and special collections at University of the Arts London. So it was more informative for me than I first thought when I started in the process of this project. So another slide that I showed the children was to explain what an illustrator does, because they were quite young and illustration, it seems too broad for them. And since we were given I was given a brief by Robin that was quite broad in itself, I decided to start back with my own practice and talk about what elements of it connected to the Mingana collection itself. So I just looked at various pieces of my work and demonstrated to them what illustration means, whether it's adding images to words or replacing words with images to add value or meaning to the concept or idea that they're trying to portray. And it's quite a new thing for them to engage with, but as soon as I talked about individual pieces and what they meant, I think it started to ignite where they'd seen illustration before. We talked about examples where they had seen it, and then we brought it back round to looking at manuscripts. And I made a direct comparison with some of my own work and some of the manuscripts from the Mingana collection. I think that helped to give them context before I asked them to participate in what I was going to ask them to do. And I thought that was really important, to just set up a safe space. And I think that's really key, just to make sure that I demonstrated to them that I was an outsider to the collection to begin with, and that I had done some research along the way, and this is what I found in connection with my own work, so that they could see a journey that I had gone through and that they could start to make those connections themselves. So there's another example as well. Another reason why Robin sort of hired me for this project was because in the past I'd worked with museums interpreting their collections through illustration as means, and that I'd been focused and interested on travels, and because these manuscripts are from very far away to these children, it's a way of relating to them, making them personal to themselves, and I think that added value to the overall pilot and what we tried to achieve. And at the end, when we were in discussion and evaluating what we would do differently next, it was to maybe make more emphasis on that and make that a key part of the process. During the research in the early days, I spent some time before engaging with the children, which I thought was really important, not just to familiarise myself with the actual collection and archives themselves and the objects, but just to find out a bit more about the process, a bit more about the staff on site and what they felt about this project. And they were nervous about me coming as well. And I think through becoming familiar with me asking questions that they maybe knew all the answers to but weren't used to having, because maybe they were too simple, or maybe they hadn't thought about how they would communicate that to a group of children as well. I think it really prepped them, not fully, but maybe in some ways, for when the children actually did arrive on site. And I think that they were excited, and it meant that they felt more invested in this project as well. And the image on the right there is Robin with Marie, who works in the back to help preserve some of the manuscripts, and I had a really good conversation with her about the journey of the manuscript when it comes into the archive and how to keep it well preserved. And she had all of these examples which we then later brought out in the early visits from the children to the library on site, and it really helped them to inform the practical side of preservation and got them excited to meet Trevor the goat, which is an early manuscript in the making. And it just made it more real to them what the life of a manuscript actually is. So it was really valuable to me spending time with Neelam, who Robin explained works at the library and knows the manuscripts from this particular Mingana collection really well. She was able to pull out things that were a variety of designs, and through that we started to talk about developing what techniques the children might like to learn that were illustrative, so relating back to my practice, but then also dissecting the actual creation of these manuscripts and talking about how special these are and how precious they are and what they might mean for them, so talking about their stories as well. In prep for what we would ask them to do. But we'll talk now in collaboration about what we actually did with the kids.
We'll try this if it works. So I mentioned these were year 5 students, sorry, that's about 10 years old from primary schools, yeah. So the first thing we asked them to do was not come separately. We had mixed groups, didn't we, from both schools. They both brought quite small numbers again, which is a great benefit of a pilot. I think they were brought about 10 each today, 15 each maybe tops. And we got them to work not forcibly together, but it naturally worked out that way. So you can see here, one of the things we did do was we did a store tour with the staff, as Jhinuk mentioned, and also we allowed them a fairly, we enabled them to have a fairly free free reign, if you like. So we put these manuscripts out that you've seen, and they went round in pairs usually, going through them there were quite a lot of adults in the room as well, which always helps, just going through them and just really not giving them a particular end sort of outcome, just saying, have a look at the manuscript, what do you think they are? We just chatted about them.
And I think that was important. Going back to the safe space that I mentioned that we set up, it meant that the children would talk to us with their real ideas and kind of express them openly with each other as well in private conversations, because it felt safe to do so and there was no wrong answer.
You can see here, this is a classic case of, if anybody knows the Ofsted guidelines, this is Transcendence, this is wow factor, this is and we mentioned earlier, Frankie was talking about the use of statistics. You can't bottle that, can you? That is a picture that you cannot, it's immeasurable, but well, I just love that image. It's in there for no other reason than I like the image. We also, as Jhinuk mentioned, worked with Marie, who's a conservator, and she does a lot of science. And both Jhinuk and Marie were fantastic role models as well for different reasons. And that's really important as well with schools. These schools, they wanted to meet people that, the phrase again is meet people they wouldn't normally meet. And Jhinuk and Marie were two of those people who were specialists in areas that school wouldn't normally engage with. So we worked, as you can see there, she's doing some science there. She's washing documents. I didn't know you could wash paper. It was unbelievable. So she's doing some washing there. As you can see, kids, different uniforms, all mixed up together. It wasn't a problem.
And I think what happens during these sort of tours is interesting as well, because I would always enforce what we were going to then do. So it was kind of, they were thinking about it along the way, how they would relate back to what they had to do when they got back to the workshop room and design.
So what we asked them to do is, again, I hate to keep saying it's fairly open-ended, that all we wanted to do was to work in groups, and we actually would make a manuscript, essentially, a very large manuscript. I'm not sure what size that is. Is it called AO, I think it was, A0, yeah. And they were asked to basically describe an element of what's important to you in modern Birmingham. It was really, honestly, it's simple as that, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And again, for no reason other than I love this picture. 2 different children from different schools. These are templates that Jhinuk did for summer calligraphy, didn't you, as well? And they were just working together, and these two, you know, became great mates for the sort of 2 hours which they were together.
Yeah, and I think the focus was, for us, was about the process of collaboration more than the end product. So it didn't matter how they got there, but it was about the conversations they did, because they mixed the two school groups in creating the manuscript. So
it's called process-driven, basically, isn't it? Yeah, it's essentially, and they're great. I mean, I hold my hand up. This is brilliant, because you know we were under no illusion. Whatever the outcome was the outcome, and that I don't often get a chance to do that. So this is them creating their amazing manuscripts. It's on parchment substitute, is that correct? So it wasn't a dead goat, but it was as near as we could get to it. Sadly, I think the kids would have liked to sacrifice. No. But what themes started to come out straight away when we were talking to the kids, when we were talking to the children about this, was there were certain similarities in their lives, even though they were from very different backgrounds, and some themes started to become apparent. Like family was a massive theme, how important their family was. Transport, how they got to places. Never underestimate the importance of that for young students. It's incredible. Sport was a big one, and friends. This sort of, you know, how important friendship was. So
what was nice about this was because it was a pilot, we weren't quite sure how it would play out in terms of timings over 2 sessions they just had with us. So they didn't get to quite finish them to the level that they wanted to. But it provided further scope for engagement, so they really wanted to, and they had arranged for further activities where they would take it back to their own school.
Without us actually asking, they actually came up to us, and the teacher said, look, we want to finish, because we didn't leave anywhere near enough time, did we? Absolutely not, you know, because we wanted to spend as much time with the real objects as possible. We didn't spend enough time, so the actual workshop element, the creative element to it, wasn't really long enough. Yeah. And so I was really thrilled when they said, oh, we'll carry on at school, we'll do it. And schools got together and did that, which I was really thrilled about. So here's I'm going to show you these. This is what they are. There's no wrong and right way up for this, to be honest. We've debated this. I mean, you know, I'm only put it that way because it's got the amazing manuscript on the top. But to be honest, I could flip it around every degree, and you'd still get, you know. So that's one. You can see here clearly the influence of the margins here, that the Arabic, what they call arabesque, and some of the borders and that sort of thing. So you can see clearly the influence here.
And also, sorry. The collaborative name where they combined their school names. They combined
Topcliffe with Firs, called Firs Cliff. That was nice, Oh, sorry, those of you know, some poor lad supported Birmingham City Football Club. Never mind, but he put that on there anyway. This one, again, you can see again, really, look at the transport issue in the bottom right. I mean, you know, it's incredible. But look at the themes, friends, and this sort of thing as well. Again, you can clearly see the influence of the manuscript borders there.
I mean, when we spoke about it afterwards, we did talk about how it would influence further engagement or a similar project again. And for me personally, it made me think about how it would work with an adult learner group and how we would engage that collaborative element.
Another element which I can't emphasise enough is the importance of having a celebration event, a joint celebration event at the end, and also giving those children's work a value by having it framed and framed properly as well. I went to the framers that the CRL used for their other work, so it, you know, it wasn't cheap, but we got that. Mind you, we weren't paying for it, so it's fine. So it's important to have a celebration event and make these children feel. Now, I don't like these pictures where you get kids going way, but actually. I put that in because you can see we didn't ask them to mix together. We didn't ask them; they just did that. For the photographer, and they all mixed up together pretty well. So that was a great, again, in terms of Esmee Fairbairn and social impact, there's a great picture. They also wanted they came up to me and explaining what they did again, because it had been a couple of months since they did it. They were explaining to, some of you may recognise Susan Morales, she's a director of the CRL, and there's parents there as well. They're all really, really keen to show their work. And actually, they've also been back since then to do a clay modelling session with me on creating their own cuneiform tablets.
And actually, the staff at Cadbury Research Library also found it valuable, and they wanted to create more projects like this.
One member of staff went from saying, oh, there's a school coming in, worried, and to when's the next school coming in. This was really nice. And just a quick bit of evaluation. We did some really quick, like, yellow sticky pad things. And some of the evaluation from the kids, we asked them just to say a few words, what they felt. And it's amazing. We didn't tell them to say this. Today I enjoyed getting to know Topcliffe and drawing my flowers, getting to meet new people, to be part of a team, because because we get to interact with ourselves, to interact, well, I can't read that, interact with new friends. And these are all things that came up, thank you, sorry. And I say, you know, you can't put a value on that, can you? This sort of evaluation, the immediate evaluation from children, you can't put a value on that. I think that's it. Thank you.